and Oceanic Law, and we are going to be having a very interesting discourse today on the topic Independent Candidacy, a panacea for political party instability in Nigeria. And we're going to be using ADC and ADC political parties as a case study. Joining us today is no other person than Dr. Tony Clinton Jaja. Is the Senior Counsel of Nigeria, SCN, the highest rank of non-litigation Nigerian lawyers. He is on record as the first Nigerian lawyer to be awarded a PhD degree with specialization in legislative drafting by the University of London. In the year 2014, he was part of the legal team that pioneered the Master of Laws (LLM) in legislative drafting program at the National Institute of Legislative Studies. In collaboration with the University of Benin, he previously worked as a legal consultant for training the lawyers of the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization. Since the year 2024, he is serving as a legal consultant for training lawyers of the Ministry of Justice, Kingdom of Lesotho, and Lesotho Law Reform Commission. He is an adjunct faculty at the National University of Lesotho. In recognition of his expertise, the Institute of Legislative Studies, University of Ilorin, has just invited him to contribute a chapter on legislative drafting to their project book. Very warm welcome to you, sir. It's an honor to have you, Dr. Tony Clinton.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And joining us today is the Executive Director of the Center for Community and Oceanic Law, Professor Amos Enabulele. He's a professor of international law, the Executive Director of the Center for Community Law, a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, Solicitor England and Wales. He has extensive experience in ECOWAS law and has handled several cases at the ECOWAS Court of Justice. He also has an extensive publication on ECOWAS law and practice. It's very great to have you with us today, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes. So we are going straight to the purpose of today's event. If we look at the current cases of political structures in Nigeria, there has been a lot of instability. Although our focus is going to be on West Africa, we are going to be using certain occurrences within the sphere of Nigeria political system as a case study. So I would like to ask a question, sir. We know that this is not just a Nigeria problem, this is a regional problem because we're looking at West Africa. But why does it tend to look as if West African political parties are so prone to internal fractures? We have cases of ADC, we have cases of NDC, so many oppositions try to come up, and yet there are internal crises, different breakouts, different factions. One claim that I'm the leader. For example, we see the case of ADC. There's a David Malek structure. There are others who went to court to challenge that they are the real ones who should be controlling the party. So is it a lack of ideology, or is it purely down to internal party godfatherism? Is it an ideology crisis, or is it godfatherism that is causing this internal crisis and fractures? So over to you, and Dr. Clinton, sir.
Oh, well, I am currently in the Kingdom of Lesotho, and this month, the Constitutional Court ruled that the deregistration of 3 political parties had to be reversed, and their own independent electoral commission had to re-register those parties. So the trend here in the Kingdom of Lesotho is that when there's any disagreement, people break away and form their own political parties. They do not insist on having 2 factions of the same party. That's a trend I've noticed in the Kingdom of Lesotho. So once there's any, the current party, the ruling party, was formed in the year 2022. It broke away from existing parties. They form a fresh political party and go into the elections. But in Nigeria, we notice the trend that people insist on remaining in the same political parties and having factions. Now, the chief of staff to the president, who was a former speaker to the House of Reps, he confessed that he instructed a House of Reps member from Kogi, say, stay in that ADC and scatter them. That's the word he used, scatter them. So it tells you that this is an engineered, is something that the ruling party is deliberately engineering to create crisis in the other political parties which are opposition, to ensure that they do not enter into the election as a united front. So I believe it's a strategy based on the admission, the confession of the chief of staff, Femi Gbajabiamila. He said it, that they should scatter these political parties by the disunity so that they will not be united to face the ruling majority party during the next election.
Thank you very much for the insightful comments on Dr. Clinton. Prof, what do you have to say regarding this position?
Okay, I think Dr. Toyin has said, Jaja has said a very good foundation, focusing on the Nigeria situation. But just to give it a bit of context around West Africa, you see, this is not just a Nigeria problem. It's one that it seems as if Nigeria is just not copying bad behavior from its neighbors. If you look around us, ECOWAS has 11 member states, 12 member states at the moment. It used to be 15. 3, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they pulled out of ECOWAS because of sanctions that ECOWAS decided to impose on them, and fundamentally because Nigeria led ECOWAS at the time because our President Bola Tinubu, was the head of the Authority of Heads of States of ECOWAS. The Authority of Heads of States of ECOWAS is the highest organ, the highest institution of ECOWAS, decided to go to war against Niger because a coup happened in Niger. I will give more context to that in the course of this intro. Now, if you look around the 12 states, you can single out a few. You can single out Ghana. 2024, we saw what happened in Ghana, where a new an opposition won the presidential election. In 2023, it happened in Liberia, opposition won presidential election. But if you come closer home, if you go to Togo, Gesimbe, I hardly find it difficult to pronounce his name. He's been there, it's like a family dynasty. You know, there's been crisis under because the opposition has been muzzled. The political space has been constricted, has been so restricted, you know, because they don't want opposition to thrive. If you go to Ouattara, these are French names, pardon me if I don't call their names properly, in Côte d'Ivoire, you're going to see the same trend, you know. Even it was so bad that Ouattara disqualified Laurent Gbagbo. Laurent was the president before him. He disqualified him in the last round of elections. So it's a trend of the opposition leaders, popular ones, are disqualified, or the political party is attacked. Then if you go to Senegal, you see Macky Sall using the same tactics, you know, before the current government came in, Faye and Sanko that are already having issues, you know. If he used, he tried to make sure that the opposition did not have a footing. Because, of course, when they do this, when they become so unpopular, they know that the people wouldn't want them. Then, in Benin, Talon in Benin, there was a coup. There was an attempted coup in Benin last year. That coup did not just fall from the sky. There was a reason for that coup. Because opposition could not, the system was so restricted, political space, you know, was so harsh for the opposition that the people began to think of an alternative. Because these military boys, they take advantage of the sentiments that people are expressing. When people are frustrated and it's okay, we no longer trust in the ballot box, I'm sure many people around West Africa will say that, oh, their votes don't count. I'm sure many people in Nigeria may be saying, my vote is not going to count because in 2027, so I'm not just going to vote. And when citizens begin to express such sentiments, and it just gives vent to certain kind of reactions that we may not want to see or we do not like to see. You know, so you see that trend around West Africa. You see that trend in Sierra Leone. You see that same trend. the 2 or 3 countries that seem to be doing well democratically now, are Cape Verde. Cape Verde has already, ECOWAS has 3 blocks. It has the Francophone bloc, the Lusophone bloc, and the Anglophone bloc. The Lusophone bloc, which Cape Verde belongs to, Cape Verde is a shining star. If you go to Guinea, Daboya was a military guy. Last year, I think around November, he decided to wear agbada or whatever and contested. The opposition, you see opposition boycott here, and the opposition cried loud and said, look, this election is not going to be fair and fair. This guy has already rigged himself into office, and it happened. He became the president. Guinea-Bissau, we know what Embalo did. Embalo was losing the election in Guinea-Bissau. Then, Goodluck Jonathan mentioned it. I'm not just making allegations. So people came up to say he planned a palace coup. He got people from amongst his military that he trusted and said, oh, this is a coup. He went away from the country and all of that. He's planning to come in November to come and contest the election. So that is for the Lusophone bloc. Cape Verde is the only shining light in the Lusophone bloc. Then if you go to the Anglophone bloc, you will see Senegal. Senegal has had its troubles, but the Senegal people are very politically conscious. Senegal will be fighting already. They don't mind how many people will die once they see that you are trampling on that democratic space. So Macky Sall tried to do it. Every now and then there was protest in Senegal. So Senegal is a shining light when it comes to the Francophone, where you have Côte d'Ivoire, you have Togo. Togo for how long? Yedemas people, the same, but they have been in government for how long? This is a dynasty, sort of. If you come to Benin, you see what has happened in Benin with Talon installing his own, basically just choosing for the country. So if you look around the Francophone, you are going to see that Senegal is the shining light. Then if you come to the Anglophone, yes, you may say, okay, Liberia, last election, where I was defeated, even though it was an incumbent, yes, that's a good sign. It's quiet around there. Sierra Leone, it's difficult for me to say, but Ghana, you can single out Ghana at the moment and say, yes, Ghana is showing the light. So these blocks, you see that amongst these 3 blocks in ECOWAS, you see you can pick at least one state that is okay. This state is showing example, but beyond that, what we see is a situation where there is this muzzling of the opposition. The government in power is always after the opposition. I don't know what they do that for, because they want democracy to thrive. But then the significance of that, if I let me just quickly say this because it's important that we lay this foundation. The significance of that is that ECOWAS has a protocol on democracy and good governance. That protocol is the protocol that defines, that lays out the way ECOWAS nations should behave, the characteristics that they should have to be called ECOWAS member states. They have these convergence principles in that protocol, and democracy is well spelled out in that protocol. But that same protocol says that you can't do what we are seeing around the states. But somebody may ask and say, why are you talking about ECOWAS protocol? Don't forget that it is that protocol that ECOWAS stood upon to suspend Niger. It is that protocol that they stood upon to suspend Mali. It is that protocol that they stood upon to suspend Burkina Faso. It is that protocol that they stood upon to say they wanted to go and fight in Niger. So that same protocol now that we are now saying, okay, respect that protocol. Don't just behave like people who do not have laws governing you. When you talk to them, so it's not our turn. That same protocol was the protocol that Buhari, before the 2019 election, an electoral act was passed, he said he will not sign that. ECOWAS protocol said you can't sign whether 6 months to the election, you will not sign. That same protocol. So if anybody asks you and say, oh, why are we talking? Why is this center always talking about ECOWAS protocol? Then you can justify it by letting them see that when it is convenient for these members of these leaders, or when it is convenient to these political leaders, they cite these protocols to do whatever they feel good for them or to them at that point to protect themselves. But when it is in the interest of the people, when it is in the interest of democracy, they start asking you to say, why are you citing this protocol? Oh, it's not domesticated and all of that. So that's the context I wanted to provide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Such an insightful briefing and enlightening information. And I would like to come to the very next highlight that we're looking at: judicial intervention and their impact. Of recent, courts are increasingly deciding who wins elections and who runs a party, rather than the voters. Many years ago, when we were growing up as kids, we were being told that we're the ones who decide who will be the government. Yes, that the majority wins the vote. That was the seeming impression that was given to us. But in recent times, things have changed. We don't tend to see such movement anymore. Someone can contest for an election and the court overrides it, and someone writes a petition faulting maybe the electoral body or some other political parties of playing one or two political games in order to ring their way into such position or power. And and this has thrown a lot of questions. Has the judiciary become too involved in political parties or party politics? When the court steps to resolve internal party crisis, does it stabilize democracy or weaken it? For example, last week there was a breaking news, and I would like to read as it was reported. It said the Federal High Court sitting in Lokoja has vacated its earlier judgment, which directed INEC to register the NDC as a political party. Justice Isaac Dassin, the presiding judge, held that the earlier judgment was constitutionally defective as it was delivered without hearing from all interested parties. The ruling follows an application filed by the Peace Movement Party (PMP), where it argued that NDC's registration was based on a logo it had previously submitted to INEC before the commencement of the suit. According to the judge, all relevant parties must be heard before any substantive decision can be made in the matter. Consequently, the court ordered that the substantive suit should begin afresh with INEC, the PMP, and the NDC as parties to the case. The justice further ruled that the status could be restored to what it was before December 2025 judgment, pending the determination of the substantive suit. Now, NDC have conducted some primaries already. They already have a presidential candidate. Some people have bought tickets for House of Reps and Senate. And the judge has given an order that things should return to status quo where they recognized as December 2025 by INEC, and there was nothing like NDC. So Aisha Yusufu actually responded to this and she was like, she's not surprised anymore. The current government are trying by all means to fight opposition. And this time around, the judiciary has become victims of manipulation. So what do you have to say? The judiciary, have they become too involved in internal political matters? Dr. Clinton, sir.
Okay, my answer to that is it's a 50-50 answer. The judiciary is supposed to be the protector of the Constitution by interpreting the Constitution. You cannot leave them out of interventions in political party affairs. The general rule is that the judiciary does not get involved in internal politics of political parties, except there's an exception, except the political party has not complied with constitutional provisions. No fair hearing, whenever they violate constitutional principles, then the judiciary can intervene in the internal affairs of political parties. So, for example, you had a situation in 2007, the then ruling party, People's Democratic Party, the candidate in Rivers State, the ticket was taken from him, the governorship candidate then, Governor Rotimi Amechi, the ticket was taken from him unconstitutionally and given to another person. The man went to court, and the Supreme Court of Nigeria, in a landmark judgment, said, you cannot deprive this man of the ticket, gubernatorial ticket of that party. So they intervened, the Supreme Court intervened, restored Amechi as a governor 7 months. He had been away, the other man was a governor for 7 months. But the Supreme Court restored Amechi as the legitimate candidate of PDP in Rivers State. This was 2007. Peter Obi is a beneficiary. This was a governor that was removed. It was so messy in Anambra State in 2006. The Supreme Court also restored him as the elected governor, despite all the internal political manipulations of his party, which was ABGA. So there are instances when the courts have to intervene in political party affairs where there has been violations of the constitution by the political parties itself. So you cannot rule them out from intervention. Now, when it comes to the NDC affair, as lawyers, when you go to court, you have to present your case. One of the issues is this whoever dragged the matter to court, they were not a party to the original lawsuit that was filed in December last year. So the question arises, do they have the locus standi? In law, we call it the standing. That is the legal right to bring a lawsuit. Do they have it in the first instance? That's the question every judge asks before you commence adjudication. So the question, they are not even a registered political party. How then? They were not parties to the first lawsuit that was filed in December. So how on earth could they bring a lawsuit and the judge will listen? So these are questions that we have to answer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clinton. Prof, would like your comment on this matter.
Yeah, it's difficult to give a straight answer to that. The judiciary will always be involved because judiciary is the last hope of the common man. Even if the judiciary sat on its own, politicians will drag the judiciary. But one thing that the judiciary should not do is to get into bed with political parties or to give the impression that it is in bed with political parties. They must keep their realms separate. Judiciary, that if you want to call it, there's something they call professional boundary. The boundary should always be respected. And there are some things that you see. It's Lord Denny that said if something is bad in law, it is incurably bad. You can't build something on nothing. A judge, I've taught jurisprudence for many years. I'm not sure, and I've done extensive research on decided cases by eminent judges. I've done a big compendium on decided cases by Justice Adokbayi of blessed memory. Not too long ago, I think around 2023, did another one on Justice Otutu Obaseki. These are, by all standards, these are very eminent judges. These are judges that their judgments carried weight. So I've done extensive research in this. I've never seen a case, a single one, where a judge will sit to review his own judgments. There are situations where a judge can maybe the case was a nullity in the first place, and the party, as we have learned, I haven't read the judgment. I don't think it's a judgment I want to waste my time reading, given what we have heard, we have seen the papers. It's going to be an absolute waste of my time, But I tend to believe what I've read. I tend to believe what I've seen, So I find it difficult to conceive of a situation where a body that has no capacity in law, for what we heard, is not registered, a registered entity. It's not a registered entity at all, not to say a registered political party. It wasn't a party to the original suit. To come and, to want to come and come through the back door to nullify a well-considered judgment of the same judge. The judge cannot sit on appeal of his own judgment. So it beggars belief, and it just makes you begin to ask yourself, to say, what are we practicing in Nigeria? You hardly see, and to say that this thing happened to the ADC. And the court of appeal came down heavily on the judge, criticizing the judge. And last week we saw the Supreme Court awarding a cost personally against a lawyer for bringing a case, seeking a review of a judgment, and even said the lawyer must pay. If he doesn't, they will see a situation where a judge of the Federal High Court, give a decision of this of this nature, seeing the circumstance and what we have heard is not be denied. The time for appeal has passed. The party that is now coming to say, just said it didn't have all the facts. Just like the party, you can appeal as an interested party if you're interested. So you mentioned Obi, and that is, sometimes we had an event, I think we hosted the former Attorney General of Edo State, and this issue came up. Somebody mentioned and said, well, I know that if Obi, as established as the Conservative Party in the UK, for instance, if Obi decides to join Conservative Party to contest an election in Nigeria, somebody will go to court and the court will give a decision to say Conservative Party is no longer existing, that it is Obi they are targeting. Why I may not be in the position to make that assertion or to deny that assertion, but if he quacks like a dog, he walks like a dog, then you begin to say, oh, is this a dog that we are seeing around us? So it is something that needs to worry everyone, because the democratic space should be wide enough, should be not toxic enough for everyone to do. And politicians to do what they want to do. Politicians want to win an election. And we did say, and I keep saying, any politician that wants to win an election, because politician wants to cheat to win an election, then that position is not worth that position that they want to get into. So, but that the judiciary should want to just go out of, that seem to go out of control, like we say now. The same judiciary that stood up against the military, this same judiciary, my friend Dr. Jaja was talking about what happened in Rivers State. It was the judiciary. He was talking about what happened in Anambra State. It was the judiciary. When Atiku went against his boss, Obasanjo, and Obasanjo wanted to, the judiciary stood as tough as Obasanjo. Judiciary stood his ground. So we have a judiciary that can stand up to the occasion, that can stand up to any pressure. And I am convinced, I am optimistic that the Court of Appeal will be surprised if the Court of Appeal allows this to stand. There's no basis on which this judgment, from what we have heard, from what I've read, from all parties, nobody's denying it. It will be difficult to see how a judgment like this will stand. But it is worrisome. It should worry everyone if the judiciary is not the tool that politicians will be using. And let me quickly say this. It's not, like I said, Nigeria is just now copying bad behavior from its neighbors. Yahya Jammeh of the Gambia that Barrow took over from, he did the same. His son was so bad that any judge or magistrate that refuses to do his bidding, he will sack him. So it was so bad that when he considered the election, he wanted to use the judiciary to now solidify his position to begin to create trouble. He couldn't, because the judges are not from Gambia. He couldn't, judiciary, somebody, maybe they went into hiding, he couldn't get to quorum. It happened in Senegal. Sanko and Faye, they were in prison custody. They were in prison. It was a short just before the election that the Constitutional Court, because people started protesting, Constitutional Court ruled and said, you need to let these people contest the election, and they need to be early election. That was what happened in Senegal. Otherwise, Faye and Sanko would never have come. So we see it in Cote d'Ivoire, in Benin is the same thing, in Togo is the same thing. So Nigeria is just now getting into that mood in a way that we are beginning to see, and we do hope and we do hope that the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, will weigh into this for the sake of our democracy and the sake of the integrity of the judiciary.
Thank you, Prof. And just to add to what Dr. Clinton highlighted a few moments ago, I remember I witnessed Comrade Adam Soshomole, the former governor of Edo State. He also benefited from the judiciary's intervention, because the first tenure that he ruled as a governor, he contested the election results, and the court actually ruled him as the rightful winner of the election, and that was how he became the governor of Edo State. So, including Amechi, as Dr. Clinton cited, and Peter Obi, So I actually do believe that there is still hope in the judiciary. However, as we have rightly emphasized, it is important that we do not overrule certain protocols and standards in law that has long been established, all because of a political party involvement in trying to buy over judges' acts and their final decision over a matter that was presented before the courts. So this brings us to the third point that we're trying to highlight and look into. Is democratic participation at risk? For example, now we look at NDC. I know a number of persons who went to register for their voters card. Some of them even have to do what you call voters transfer, polling unit transfer, because they are not in the state where they initially registered, all because they found someone who they believe is fit to be a leader. And with this current ruling, their hopes have been bashed. There is no hope anymore because right now, INEC should deregister NDC and should not recognize it as a political party, including all the nomination form and everything. At the moment, is all on hold. So, democratic participation, is it at risk? Is there hope for those who actually feel that they can vote and bring into power those they believe are fit to lead them with the current state of political crisis that we're seeing in Nigeria and in West Africa at large? Dr. Clinton, over to you.
Of course, it creates a challenge for members who are in the NDC because right now, until a court of appeal rules and says they have not been deregistered, we even hear that INEC refused to give them the access code to upload their candidates. INEC is insisting that until a superior court nullifies what that federal high court, Lokoja, has said. Unfortunately, that's the law. And we don't know the appeal process, how long it will take before this uh, court of appeal will set aside that judgment or ruling by that Lokoja federal high court. So this means that all the presidential candidate of the NDC, the senatorial candidates, the House of Reps candidates, let's assume even House of Reps, maybe they have 360 candidates contesting. That means their fate is hanging in the balance. We don't know the outcome, whether the Court of Appeal will rule before the election. So this puts them in jeopardy. All the members of the NDC, all the candidates of the NDC, that shrinks the space, the choices of candidates that the electorate have to vote for. All those who have supported P2B, God forbid that the Court of Appeal does not resolve this matter before the election. That means all their hopes for P2B to become the president is gone. So that's the danger. And that's why this platform, we're talking about independent candidacy, where individuals can stand for election without necessarily being members of political parties.
And thank you, and Dr. Clinton. Prof, please, this is for you.
Yeah,
Now
okay.
okay, yes, we've seen these cases of the current trends in Nigeria political system. There have been massive defection upon defection. For example, some time ago we had 17 lawmakers defect from ADC to NDC, and different defection, just all because they are after their service interest. Majority of them are after where they believe is able to pull crowds. Now, this brings us to this independent candidacy. Do you think that there will be more democratic, compelling force when people are not forced to contest under a political party? What is the legal implication to this? Do you think that there will be more hope for a common man? Because as it stands now, it appears to be that in West Africa, people tend to either you have to have enough money, you have to be financially buoyant, or submit to a godfather, like we see in the case of Rivers, where the current FCT minister, Nelson Wike, openly says Fubara will have been impeached But he agreed that he will not contest for a second tenure, and that was why he was not impeached. So we can see things being spoken out publicly like this. What do you have to say, sir? What do you have to say with respect to this?
First of all, just to backtrack a bit and say just a word on the last question. You see, this is not just about the NDC or the ADC or the APC. I would have thought that APC has enough. If you talk about structures, they have how many governors? Over 30 governors. They control the House of National Assembly. They control House of Assembly everywhere. I would have thought that the largest party, but you can't dispute that by all standards in Nigeria. I would have thought that they have nothing to fear. So that makes it a bit difficult for me to sit down and say, oh, it's the APC that is doing this. I just don't want to believe, even if I see and things seem to suggest. I say, how can it be? How can it be someone that is a party that is so strong, so firm, is in control of resources and all of that? How can it be that they're just after opposition here and there? But that is not the thing. The thing is, you don't push a people to the wall. It is one thing to allow. We've seen elections like 2020 elections. We saw what happened with the transmission. We saw the kind of results, people cancellation and all of that. The pressure or the tension that created was doused by the candidate saying we are going to court. So people will say, okay, let's wait, and court processes, take some time. So the more time it takes, the more people get, disinterested, kind of, and move away. They move on with their lives, but when it now happens that they feel that the candidate they're supporting or candidates that wanted to contest election, they've invested in it. And by the way, let me mention what I forgot to mention when I was talking about the judges. There's something that is called vested rights that judges know too well. If a decision is being given, the time to appeal has passed, and third party have now acquired rights under that judgment. In this way, it's not just about the ADC now. It's not about the NDC. It's not just about the NDC or whatever. It's about the thousands of individuals, thousands of people that have now acquired rights through that registration. People have bought forms. People have contested election. They've acquired rights. So it is not open for any court. That's why there's a period for appeal. If you want to buy a land, for instance, and they say, oh, there's a judgment, this land is under litigation, it's on appeal, you advise yourself not to buy. But if you were told, oh, there was a case in 1975, this person won, the other person did not appeal, and you now buy, then somebody will now come out and say, oh, I should have been a party in 1975, I wasn't a party, now I want to come out. Man, the issues are resolved. And even in this case, from what I learned, the issue of this peace, whatever was raised, and the court dealt with it. So there's even issue estoppel. So there's a lot to unpack concerning this judgment. To come back to what I was saying, there's something about, okay, my candidate contested, he was cheated. Oh, well, he won. We can go on air and be saying he won. Oh, it was rigged, this rigging and all of that. But when a people bottle it in and said, oh, this is my candidate I wanted to vote for, they did not allow him contest. And it's so obvious, and people are already saying this. Before now, it was already the case. People were already saying that the APC was going after opposition. I remember, as you recall, this center filed a case maybe we'll come to that at the ECOWAS court, and those were part of the exhibits in that case, even before we go to where we are now. So it will be a bad thing. It's a dangerous thing. It's a fearful thing to create a situation where the people are so upset. The people feel that, okay, I couldn't vote the person I wanted to vote for. And the person says, oh, the candidate said, I wanted to be in this party. I paid money, and now look at, I was screened out. Not screened out, I was treated out. I wasn't allowed, judicially did this. So it's a bad thing to happen. It's not something that a nation, because a country can become ungovernable. Not because people will go to the streets and protest. Look at Iran. When the US went after Iran, US said they were going to bomb one of their infrastructure. The people, they went and did a ring around it and said, kill us first. So if it was when you have a people that, I know Iran has its own problem, it may not be a very good example. But if you have a situation where the people in the country say, okay, I just want to leave this country, I don't like this country, and there's a foreign invasion, it's going to be a problem. When Nigeria-led ECOWAS wanted to go and invade Niger, the Nigerians said, okay, you people come. When the democratic government was misbehaving, where was ECOWAS? Now we have a military. They rallied around their military. Burkina Faso, they rallied around their military. And Mali, they rallied around their military. So you don't want to create such a situation. You want a situation where people contest. You see, and this whole thing, what pains me most, we are talking about it now. I hardly have sympathies for politicians. My pain is for the people that suffer from the hands of politicians. How do you have sympathies for them? Look at the APC today. The APC is made up of people that were majorly, maybe it was in PDP. It was the two-time governor in PDP. Oh, almost all of them, apart from the president and a few, they were in PDP. The same PDP told us that they will govern Nigeria for the next 60 years from 2015. They said we'll govern for the next 50 years. But it's the same PDP that we are facing. So politicians, I scarcely have sympathy for them. There are a few of them that are good. There are a few of them that are caught in the web of all of these things. But politicians are the highest top, at the highest level of it. They don't care about you and I. They don't care about people. They just care about where their next ticket will come from. And the party that can cheat them into office most is the one that they want to follow. It doesn't matter the party is doing well or it's not doing well. So it is the people, and the people need to begin to assert themselves. It happened in Senegal. Senegalese said, no, this is not going to happen. We're not having it. And they prevailed. So it is important that the Nigerians begin to, it's not, no, you can't, you have enough problems in our house, you have enough insecurity, but let's just call a spade a spade. If something is wrong, don't say it is right because you think it favors a political party that you are part of today or that you are supporting today. Because tomorrow the baton will change. You know, the baton will change. We are talking about judiciary today. Remember Malami? The problem started from when they raided judiciary, they removed Onoge, they did all of that. That was when judiciary began. The same Malami today, he never believed he would be where he is today. Look at the Aerofiles of this world. They never believed they'll be where they are today. But when you allow justice to it, that's why Sowore, like Sowore or hate him, he's consistent for one thing. Doesn't matter who is involved. He wants to say, follow the path of the law. If you treat his enemy badly, if you use judiciary to treat his enemy badly, so where is there? Fighting for the enemy. He's going to abuse him tomorrow, but it doesn't stop him from saying, government, you can't do this. Everybody should have that spirit. It's not about it's your enemy today, but to be you tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Clinton, I would like to ask this question. Is forcing a politician to belong to a political party a violation of their fundamental human rights of freedom of association? For example, here in West Africa, you cannot contest for positions as respect to political offices without identifying with a political party. And to also top it up, you see presidential nomination form costing millions of naira, 50 million, and even more than that. You cannot expect an average Nigerian or a citizen to be able to fund or get something like that. So independent candidacy, if people are able to stand and contest for political offices without having to identify under a particular party, will it cause chaos of endless ballot boxes, or is it also a way to counter this political brouhaha that we're seeing in West Africa?
So you have answered the question. It's an alternative. It's a cheaper alternative. Independent candidates do not need to pay for nomination form. They just submit their nominations to INEC directly. So it saves us all this money, like as you mentioned, all the money. Imagine presidential form is 50 million. Where does an average man get 50 million naira to purchase the nomination form for presidential candidate of a party? So this alternative, independent candidacy, is a cheaper alternative, and it does not violate the constitution, because even when you belong to a political party, people vote individuals. Forget the party manifestos, but they look at the individual. If it's a trustworthy individual, they vote for them regardless of the party they belong. Look at the Peter Obi example. He has followers. No matter the political party he finds himself, people follow him. When he was in Labour Party, look at the crowd. He had this effect. When he moved to the NDC, they said within a day, 11 million people registered as members of NDC. So it's individuals that people are following, the ideology of individuals, not party manifestos, so to speak. So why don't we give this a chance? It doesn't spoil anything. It doesn't jeopardize the rights of any political party for individuals to contest. And Section 40 of the Constitution recognizes freedom to associate or freedom not to associate. So you can decide to be a solo candidate, without affiliating with any political party. So our incorporated trustees, we want to test this in court. We're going to court Monday. We have drafted the processes. By Monday, we're filing at the Federal High Court. Because just as NDC became a registered political party it wasn't through the INEC process. It was a court of law that made them. So we want to also go through the court of law and ask the judge to pronounce independent candidacy as an option, alternative. Because the process of using a National Assembly may not happen before the election. Remember, they only give attention to state police. The National Assembly, they've passed it within how many weeks? But when it comes to independent candidacy, that bill has been there since 2023. Even before now, during the time of Ekweremadu, independent candidacy has been a constitutional amendment bill. It never succeeded in seeing the light of day because they are not interested. They only get interested in state police where they get powers. So we want to go to court and tell the judge, please grant independent candidacy under Section 40. Allow them to contest in next general election. So we'll see what the judge has to say. By Monday, we are filing in court.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clinton. And I actually do agree with you. I think it's going to make a lot of significant difference in the political structure of West Africa. Moving on to the prohibition of independent candidacy and human rights. Prof, please, this is actually towards you now, to your own direction. As Dr. Clinton rightfully said, Section 40 of the 1999 Nigeria Constitution guarantees every citizen the freedom of association or non-association, as Dr. Clinton rightly quoted. Now, currently, the Constitution also mandates that you must be sponsored by a registered political party to stand for an election. Albeit, we know that the African Court on Human and People's Rights ruled that a case on an absolute ban on independent candidacy that it violates the African Charter. The court held that forcing people into political parties indirectly compels them to join groups against their will and arbitrarily limit their right to participate in public affairs. Since Nigeria is a signatory to the African Charter, the prohibiting independent candidates can it be viewed as a direct violation of the regional human rights commitments based on the ruling of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, sir?
Okay, just quickly to correct one statement that you made. It will surprise you to know that Nigeria is the only state. I stand to be corrected because I can't be too sure about the Lusophone states, but for the Francophone and Anglophone state, Nigeria is the only state that prohibits independent candidacy. Ghana, there's independent candidacy, but not for the presidency. There's independent candidacy for members of parliament. Sierra Leone, they didn't have independent candidacy until last year. Last year, they amended their constitution to make provision for independent candidacy. Liberia, where George Weah contested as an independent first in Liberia at some point. even Johnson, I think Sally Johnson contested as an independent. So in Sierra Leone, yeah, I've mentioned Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, there's independent candidacy in Cote d'Ivoire. In fact, Cote d'Ivoire in both in theory and practice is the only one that you can say, because Cote d'Ivoire in 2027, independent, I think independent had up to, they got a good percentage of the members of parliament or their congress, whatever they call it. Benin has independent candidacy. Togo has independent candidacy. So ECOWAS states, Nigeria is the only ECOWAS state. Aside, I can't be sure about Guinea-Bissau, Guinea and Cabo Verde or Cape Verde, but I'm sure they will have independent candidacy because Lusophone, usually they model their constitution after the Anglophone style. So after the Francophone style, all the Francophone countries have independent candidacy. Only Nigeria, you cannot contest anything as an independent. But that's why I said in Cote d'Ivoire, in theory and practice. In Benin, for instance, it's not just enough to say independent candidacy. They grant independent candidacy. At the end of the day, they also put a clause that makes it impossible. They make it so, the threshold so high that it will be impossible to fulfill. In Benin, for instance, there's independent candidacy, but the provision, there's been a series of amendments. I think in the last 5 years, because Talon wanted is another candidate to win, he began to do series of amendments that for you to be an independent candidate, you have to be sponsored. You have to be sponsored by a high number of members of parliament. So you want me to be independent? So I could go to people who are members of party to sponsor me. How's that possible? It's not going to happen. So but Ghana has independent candidacy that's not tied to anything when it comes to House of Parliament. It may be a starting point to their parliament. Parliament says if you are, I think it's Article 97 or Section 97 of their constitution, if you are a member of parliament, you cannot, if you want to become an independent, you have to resign. If you're an independent, you want to become a member of parliament, but anybody can come to parliament as an independent candidate. So it is there in Ghana. Then, whether it is a violation of rights of the African Charter and Human Rights, I would like to speak. I'm glad that ADRAP, Dr. Jaja is the Secretary General of ADRAP. I'm glad that they're also going to court to litigate this matter. We are the ECOWAS Community Court of Justice. Our choice of ECOWAS is because we want ECOWAS to look into the matter from the point of view. ECOWAS court will not interpret our constitution. It's not a law before the ECOWAS court. It's the African Charter and Human Rights, the ECOWAS Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance, then the African Charter on Democracy and Good Governance that ECOWAS court will be looking at, particularly Article 13 of the African Charter on Human Rights and the article that deals with association. Article 13 allows you to participate in the governance of your state. Even though we've gone to that court and the case is pending, we are mindful of the fact that in 2018, in the case of Ume and Federal Republic of Nigeria, certain individuals had gone to court, the same ECOWAS court, over the same issue. And the ECOWAS court said there wasn't a violation, that they were not banned by decision of the African Court on Human Rights, which they distinguished. But post that judgment, the ECOWAS court has given some judgments that we are leveraging to say now we have gone beyond that. Jurisprudence has changed. Can we reopen? Can we look at? It's not reopen because we are not parties to that, but we are confident that the court will find that this is, if you look at it from what we are seeing now, the problem we are having with political parties having this providence here and there, they are marked that they are the whole thing shifting to the court. If you are a practicing lawyer, you file a case in court, the case can be there for how long? For how long? There's a case we filed in court. My firm in Nigeria filed in court in 2015 at the Supreme Court. That case has not even been called one day. We will file a motion to say we filed a motion last year. The case has not been called, but political matters, Supreme Court is saddled with political cases. So if you have independent candidacy, you cannot go and, if, for instance, somebody like Peter Obi had the opportunity to contest as an independent, you can't go and sue Peter Obi and say, Peter Obi, we are suing you that, you are not supposed to be a candidate. We are suing you because you have all this kind of nonsense that you are seeing with political parties. Somebody coming out from nowhere and say, oh, what is even, for instance, if you look at Ada that went to court concerning ADC, you ask Ada, what's Ada's problem? If you are saying discrimination is a comparative thing. Oh, you treated NDC better than you treated us. So INEC has discriminated against us. Can you ask INEC to also register us? That's what you can. You cannot say, oh, because INEC, you gave judgment, they registered NDC, you have discriminated against us. Now NDC judgment, NDC's registration must be nullified. What nonsense? That's our nonsense. That a lawyer will even go to court to argue such is beyond me. I struggle to see how a lawyer will go to court and argue that. If you are talking about discrimination, it's a comparative thing. Oh, you have treated me less favorably than you treated my opponent, the other. It's not even your opponent, the other party. Okay, I'm not taking advantage of this. You now also do it to me. Register me as a political party. That's all that you have locals to do. It's not to say bring the house down because you did this. So, but I think coming back to your point, I think that the whole toxic situation that we're having now, having independent candidature or candidacy will reduce the pressure on political parties. You rightly mentioned the amount that they are using that they are paying. I think there's work that we're doing at the center, and I believe you are aware. I know you are aware. Looking at if a governor, how much is a governor's pay? For instance, if you take the APC governors, for instance, how much is their pay? If you look at the website of National Mobilization and Fiscal Commission, and you check as what's their pay. So if that person is paying so much for a ticket, not to campaign, and you compare that to the person's pay, are we not in trouble? Is there no trouble? You can see the trouble already. So that person gets into office, you are not saying, oh, you are not performing. Oh, really? It's not performing? When he was spending so much to pay for tickets. So there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of overhaul to be done. And there need to be cross-party agreement on what needs to be done. Let no party say we are enjoying it today. Eldorado is going to be there forever. No, nothing lasts forever. A friend of mine once said to me, when a certain governor was oppressing him, I saw him, we met in Ghana, incidentally in an ECOWAS conference, and I said, Oga, my thoughts are with you, my prayers are with you. He said, don't worry, don't cry for me. He said, you see these people? He said, they think they'll be in government forever. He was referring to this ex-governor. Excuse me, I don't want to mention his name. But today, the man is jumping, the man is in custody. He thought he was going to be in government forever. So that is what it is. There should be this cross-party agreement on how Nigerian democracy needs to be run. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Sir. Thank you, Prof. So we'll be coming to the end of our live stream very soon, but I just want to take a few questions from our chat box. Someone is asking, please, with the way Nigeria politics is going, is the judiciary still the hope of a common man? Because the electoral bodies are no longer reliable. So, Dr. Clinton, any comment on that?
Well, we believe until we have an alternative, the judiciary still remains the hope, because there's no other alternative. You can't go to take them to shrine. If somebody offends you, you can't go to shrine. It is the court of law you drag them to. So for now, until we have another alternative, the judiciary still remains the last hope for the common man.
Thank you, Dr. Clinton. I would like to know, what advice do you have to give to citizens who are trying to fight for democratic rights? What advice? Should they be discouraged? Should they be deterred? Or should they fight beyond this pressure and the frustration that is currently being displayed in the political instability that we are currently seeing in Nigeria and West Africa at large?
Well, if the alternative, I always say, what is the alternative? If you don't want to fight, then you must be ready to endure whatever comes your way, whatever they throw at you. You take it like that. Nothing, you can't complain. So if that is what you want to do, no problem. But for me, I have trained myself over the years. Training is a training that if somebody violates your rights, you have the option of going to court. It may take years, but eventually it catches up. I've seen over and over again, I've seen where the courts have worked to my benefit. In my employment, my former director general, for 16 years, she had all the political connections. She was untouchable. EFCC, ICPC, nobody could get to her. But I kept writing petitions to ICPC. There was a change of leadership of ICPC. A lawyer became the head, and the lawyer took this woman to court. By February 2024, the court ordered her arrest and prosecution by ICPC. So that to me tells me that, look, if you keep pressing on, it may not happen immediately. If you keep pressing, eventually you may get a good judge, a good head of one government agency that would do the right thing. But if you keep quiet, nothing happens. The person goes and continues. The case of Malami is another example. 2020, this man was like the most powerful man in Nigeria. He removed a sitting Chief Justice of Nigeria. I wrote all manner of petitions against him. It was going nowhere. But today I am a prosecution witness for the DSS against Malami. I am proud of that and I'm happy. He has sent all kinds of judges to phone me, my classmates who are judges from Kebbi State. I told them when Malami was on rampage, none of you spoke to him to say, calm down, don't break the laws. Nobody. So now nobody, I'm not listening to anybody. Let him go and do his time, face the prosecution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clinton. Really great to have you here with us, and we've really gotten so much valuable information from your contribution today. And Prof, please, what advice do you have for those who are thinking of giving up, believing that there's no hope anymore?
Well, it's my advice is what I said before. Let's call a spade, knowing that what goes around comes around. The problem is that we tend to support evil when it favors the political party that we support, or tribes that our tribe person or our relative is gaining an advantage in. So I think for everyone, there's no need to. The situation is depressing. Me as a lawyer of over 2 decades standing, I just can't stomach some of the judgments that are coming out of our courts, and we keep telling you, Judge Dr. Jaja said you won't go to the shrine. You tell people and say the judicial is the last hope of the common man. It's still the last hope of the common man, and we believe that there have been missed opportunities. When the judiciary was desecrated by Malami and his cohorts, I expected the bar, the NBA, to rise up, to rise up strong on that occasion. But what happened. And so we are seeing a repeat over and over again. What we are seeing are missed opportunities, So I believe that the people need to get more involved. It's not everything is not a skit. We do too many, we joke too much in this country. Everything should not be turned into a skit. People should get serious. It's about people's lives, but we must do it in a civilized manner. You go online, somebody is and that's one. There's no constructive discussion. They just don't talk to themselves. They abuse. You go online and you disagree with somebody. They come on. What you are going to get is something that you never that you would not have imagined you would get. You can't. There need to be the space. We are talking about government, the political space shrinking. There's also the social space that is shrinking. That people are afraid. People are afraid to speak up. People are afraid to speak out. We must be able to come. If you don't dialogue, you can't come to that cross-party and cross-tribal and cross-ethnic consensus about how to move our country forward. So everybody needs, there's no, yes, it's depressing, as I said, but I think and I know that there is hope. One thing about the president that you see today, I know that the situations are different. Perhaps those other presidents, where I don't want to use to make assumptions, but the president that we see today, he's when PDP was in charge during President Obasanjo, he stood his ground. He stood his ground, and he was consistent. So I don't know what medicine they are taking today. It may be different from the ones that was administered in the past. But I think that there's and that's also there's something about Obi that seems to be a trigger for the assumption or the notion or the assertion that the dust is being thrown at him because people do not want him to contest elections. So I think that, again, my advice to people is we need to stay focused on this point. We need to stay consistent. We need to keep talking about it, and perhaps we'll be able to find a solution at some point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Napolele. It has really been a great time having both of you to lecture us and dissect the current political structure and instability that we are witnessing in West Africa. Dr. Clinton, we really appreciate your time with us. It has been a lot of interesting moments having you here. You also show that you have mastery in this aspect of discussion. This is something that you can really do enough justice to. Thank you very much, Dr. Clinton. And Professor Amos
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the time and the contribution, the insightful lecture. We really have done justice to this topic, and we believe so much that those who followed and those who are going to follow and also watch are going to benefit seriously from this insightful live stream. With this, we're coming to the end of our live section today. Please do it to like and subscribe to our channel. We're also very much active on Facebook, Center for Community and Oceanic Law, on X, Center for Community and Oceanic Law. Same thing on YouTube. I'm also active on LinkedIn. We also have a WhatsApp channel. So please do it to follow us, and we look forward to bringing more interesting moments like this to our audience and our followers. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll be calling it a day from here. Bye.